Hello guys, and welcome to another discussion video. And today I wanted to talk about criticism, and specifically criticism of Nintendo, because there seems to be a lot of arguments behind it, specifically on Twitter, but it's not limited to Twitter. I guess it's all across the internet. But there's been a lot of examples of Nintendo doing a questionable, if not a downright bad decision, and there's usually a lot of people criticizing, which is a good thing. That's a really good thing to criticize bad decisions so Nintendo could fix them later, possibly. And when people are giving that criticism, there's a lot of people who are blindly defending these decisions and kind of going against that criticism, and it's mostly because of basically toxic positivity. And a lot of the time, they enjoy games or aspects about Nintendo to the point where they view any criticism as an attack on their enjoyment of it. I know that's not always the case, but that seems to be the case a lot of the time. Because I see a lot of people saying, just enjoy things, or you didn't have to explain it that much, or anything like that, kind of disregarding people's opinions on things. And I mean, sure, it's always good to have opinions on both sides of things, but when you're actively going against someone's criticism, that's kind of a bit much. Because that really seems like they're kind of blindly defending Nintendo. Corporations aren't your friend. They're not really gonna support you or anything. They're only doing decisions for financial gain and everything. Obviously, they are putting out quality products, and they are putting out quality games, but that doesn't mean every one of their decisions are good. There's a lot of bad decisions that they've made, and I'm gonna talk about some specific examples in this video that have had a lot of discourse and had a lot of issues on Twitter and everything in the past couple of years. And there's a lot of people who are blindly defending these decisions a lot of the time, with toxic positivity, just kind of enjoying things to the point where they view any criticism of it as an attack on it, like I said. And that can cause a lot of issues in the community, and it can cause a lot of stigma behind discussions of some games. And the first example that I wanted to talk about is Paper Mario. Though Paper Mario is a little different, I know that's not really the best example to bring up first since that's kind of isolated, but it still kind of fits into this situation. Obviously, if people like the modern Nintendo or the modern Paper Mario games, they're not Nintendo defenders. Heck, I even enjoyed Origami King. The thing is, with the Paper Mario series, a lot of people are criticizing it with the modern games because they want to see the series improve. They don't really, most people aren't trying to push that the Thousand Year Door is better and everything. I really enjoyed the Thousand Year Door, and I enjoyed it more than the modern games, but I'm not trying to go under every post where someone is talking about the modern Paper Mario games and just basically saying, oh, you're playing really bad games, you should just play Thousand Year Door, and being really toxic about that. There's really not many people actually like that, and I feel like there's a lot of Paper Mario fans that view any criticism coming from older fans of the series as just blatantly hating modern Paper Mario, and even Origami King. With Origami King specifically, I really enjoyed the game. I would say that it's almost up there with the older Paper Mario games, even though I did enjoy the first three better. I still really enjoyed it, but I do have some criticism with the game. There was a lack of original characters, the battle system was a little weird, and there's a lack of experience points, and different things like that. And I feel like that criticism could sometimes be summed up as you just want the same thing again as Thousand Year Door or Super Paper Mario, and that's not really the case. Well, I mean, yes, I do want the games to be more like the older ones, because I feel like the older ones had a really good and consistent quality, but I just want, these are things that would make the game better for me. And they're not really limited to the side issue that the Paper Mario series has. So that's one example of, like, basically stigma behind Nintendo criticism. And another one is free content updates. So, a lot of the time when I bring up, like, free content updates and sometimes called fix it later approach, I try not to use the fix it later approach term much anymore, because that tends to spark a lot of discussion. Because, I mean, even though technically is true, because they're finishing the game later, a lot of people perceive it in a really negative way. Like, sometimes I bring it up and they're like, oh, the game is finished, they're just adding extra content. And I tend to just say free content updates now, because, I mean, technically that's what it is, but I have a lot of problems with it. Like, many other people do, because it's basically making games at launch have a lack of content. Like, in Nintendo Switch Sports, there's only going to be 6 sports at launch, and in other games like Mario Golf Super Rush, there was only, like, a few courses and different things like that. Even though I enjoyed that game, I'm not afraid to admit its flaws. Mario Tennis Aces didn't even have a stage select screen, and like half of its characters weren't even in the game at launch. I'm not sure if it was exactly half, but there were a lot of characters that weren't at launch. But even Animal Crossing New Horizons, like a really well-beloved game, a really popular game that most people enjoy, that's getting criticism too, like with the free content updates and everything like that. But I see a lot of people saying that these free content updates are okay because it's just adding more content and keeping players engaged. I mean, sure, that is an opinion, but I feel like a lot of people just keep bringing it up, and they, like, whenever someone discusses free content updates and someone has a problem with it, I mean, people don't even consider that it is a problem at all. Like, they just generally just write it off as, like, that's not an issue at all. They don't even look at any aspects of it. And I know that's just an opinion, but I feel like it kind of seems like they're not really looking into it that much when people just say, oh, they're just updating the game, it's just making the game better. A lot of people don't look into it farther than that. And there's nothing wrong with people saying that, like, or the people saying that. I mean, it's just really, it really comes across as you're just kind of going against that criticism, like someone actually wants to improve something about the game, but they're just saying, oh, it's a non-issue and everything like that. I've gotten that a lot in the comments of my Nintendo Switch Sports video and on Twitter. And I mean, the thing is, with games like Nintendo Switch Sports, you're allowed to enjoy the game. Like, I'm pretty sure it's fun. I'm pretty sure it's a really fun game. It's just, I have a problem with one of the aspects of the game, and a lot of other people have a problem with it too. And I feel like I said, it's another example of that toxic positivity that Nintendo defenders have, or like that, or not, it's not even positivity a lot of the time. It's also really negativity when defending these games too, like when a lot of people are bringing stuff like this up. And a couple other ones, I don't really see people defend these as much, which is good because they're not really good decisions. But I've seen Nintendo Switch Online and even fan game takedowns being defended. And with Nintendo Switch Online, I mean, it's kind of an issue that can go both ways. Like, I mean, even though it's generally seen as a negative service, there are like a couple positive things about it, like because they've been improving it lately with like different games and everything. But a lot of the time, with the really bad decisions of it, like kind of the release of retro games, not being able to do a virtual console and doing kind of a drip feed, and kind of restricting the like retro games to a subscription service, they're not really properly preserved. A lot of the time, people just write that off as, oh, you're getting a good deal for games and everything. You're just getting all of these games at once, and you can. It's just a lot of people don't even consider the other side or consider other things about or other aspects about it, like game preservation. People don't even like consider game preservation a lot of the time. Like a lot of the time just people just say, oh, it's a good deal that you're getting a lot of these games, but they fail to consider that it's a part of a subscription service, that, like, you don't keep these games, they'll eventually go down, like, once the servers are offline. So I feel like a lot of the issue when people try to, like, deflect any criticism towards Nintendo, it's usually, like, they usually don't consider certain aspects of it, or they don't want to consider certain aspects of it because they're enjoying it. And even if you're enjoying something, that doesn't mean that certain aspects of it are completely okay. I mean, like, it's just, I feel like people should tend to avoid things they disagree with. I mean, except if it's something like you really need to argue about or something like that. But, like, with issues such as these, I feel like failing to consider the opposite side when taking an argument can really lead to a lot of problems. I mean, this is really specific. Well, I mean, it's not really entirely specific to Nintendo, but I feel like there's a lot of cases with Nintendo where this happens. And the final example that I have for basically discourse of criticism in the Nintendo community is fan game takedowns. Like, I see a lot of people actually defending the fact that, like, Nintendo should have took it down because of legal reasons. And I've said multiple times that just because, like, it's technically not legal to use a certain property doesn't mean it's okay. If a person put a lot of time and effort into a project, that it just doesn't come across well when someone just says, oh, that's good that Nintendo took it down, they were taking advantage of one of their properties. That really seems like they're just shilling towards the corporation and everything, and just failing to consider, like, the person's actual project that Nintendo took down. And it's really unfortunate that mindset exists. And that's kind of the last example that I have with discourse and everything. Obviously, the fan game example, that's definitely less discussed, well, in terms of discourse and everything between people who think Nintendo's doing the right thing and not doing the right thing. But, like, either way, that is still kind of an example of that. But, so, finally, I feel like criticism is a good thing. It's really good since it could actually help Nintendo improve. And I feel like a lot of people don't consider that all of the time, because, like, when they see, like, certain games, they feel like it doesn't need improvement because they're already enjoying it. But I feel like all games, even my favorite game of all time, Super Mario Odyssey, I feel like that needs improvement, like, in certain ways. Like, I would say any of my top 10 games, like, would need improvement. Like, I feel like no game is absolutely perfect. And I feel like there's always some way to improve a game. So that's why criticism is good, because it can actually help certain series. Like, one example is the Kirby series, and even though that's not directly developed by Nintendo, HAL Labs is pretty close to Nintendo, and a lot of the info or criticism about Kirby Star Allies was directed partially at Nintendo, because it was using that free content update model and had a lack of content, which seems to be the trend with a lot of Nintendo's games. So it could have been a Nintendo decision on that part, in order, like, with how the game is structured and everything. But basically, Nintendo and HAL Laboratory took that criticism into consideration and made Forgotten Land, which is a huge step in the Kirby series. It was a revolutionary step. Since it's the first 3D game, there's a lot of innovation, and I would even say it's the peak of the series so far. And it's really good. And I feel like they improved almost everything that Star Allies, like, almost every problem that Star Allies had. It has a good amount of content, it has a lot of original ideas, and it actually revolutionizes the formula, which was basically kind of it was basically taking the feedback, or it was basically kind of feedback to all the criticism from Star Allies. And another example of criticism helping Nintendo to improve is the return of a lot of dormant series like Metroid, Mario Strikers, WarioWare, different things like that, and I feel like a lot of these series are returning now is because of the discussion and criticism from Nintendo fans over the past few years. Because there's been a lot of criticism about Nintendo sticking to certain series and not really bringing back more dormant series like Metroid, Mario Strikers, different things like that. Like, that was especially apparent around 2017, 2018, all the way up until 2021 when they started kind of bringing back a lot of some of the older games, or older series, that haven't had a new entry in a while. So I feel like they're definitely taking that feedback into consideration. They're actually kind of bringing back the dormant series partially because of the fans. I know that's not entirely why, but I feel like Nintendo's philosophy in the modern era with bringing back these dormant series is partially due to the fans and due to many people wanting these series to return. And that is a form of criticism. I know, like, it's not really negative, I guess. It's not completely negative, but it still is criticism because it's really something that people are asking for Nintendo to improve. And that's really kind of working out with a lot of these series coming back. So, anyways, I feel like criticism is a good thing for Nintendo. And I mean, a lot of people are saying that criticism is toxic. And I mean, sure, there can be examples of people being toxic about, like, certain aspects of criticism towards Nintendo or a certain, like, idea or something like that. Like, if someone keeps spamming, like, that Switch Sports is an awful game, and Nintendo's replies, I mean, yes, that is toxic. I mean, even for someone who doesn't agree with what Nintendo's doing with Switch Sports, I can definitely say that's a pretty toxic thing. And what's also not right is Nintendo defenders deflecting all of this criticism towards Nintendo, because this criticism, in the end, is trying to help Nintendo improve. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. And make sure to check out my Discord server and Twitter if you want to. Goodbye.